Hi, my name is Melody McNeil, and I'm a believer who has victory over alcohol and drugs. This is very bright. I can't see anyone, so that's good. I'm not nervous now. As a child, I was a tomboy. I was always trying to get attention. I was so jealous when my sister was born because I wasn't getting all the attention anymore. She was she's 3 years younger than me. So my sister and I played ball with the boys in the neighborhood and played outside a lot. I was very creative. I loved to draw and paint as far back as I can remember. But I learned in elementary school how to make friends by getting in trouble with other kids because I was kind of shy and I had a hard time making friends. I got caught stealing stickers when I snuck back into the classroom during PE to get them out of a girl's pencil box. I seemed to crave excitement and adrenaline even as a young child. In middle school, I tried alcohol and cigarettes at the bus stop, and I immediately realized that I enjoyed sneaking and doing something that I wasn't supposed to do. I was a straight-A student and had dreams of becoming an artist. In middle school, my friends were the honor roll kids, and I got picked on sometimes because I was quiet, believe it or not. I wanted to fit in with the popular kids, but it was hard to get the right clothes and shoes. So in middle school, I had a close friend that was a pastor's daughter, and we went to youth group every week, and we went to Christian summer camp. I always went to church, but only because my parents made me. I didn't really have a relationship with God. I thought of him as a punishing God. I was raised Southern Baptist, and I was afraid of going to hell and the end of the world, which they seem to talk about a lot in church. When I got to high school, I sort of lost my way and went completely wild. I met a girl in my Spanish class that did not have strict rules at her house like I had at my house. So when I slept over at her house, we stayed out all night with boys and drank Mad Dog 2020 or whatever we could get our hands on. And to me, once I found alcohol, it was like magic. Alcohol was the answer to all my problems. Alcohol made me outgoing and fun. I would actually talk to boys and not worry about what people thought about me when I drank. I couldn't wait to do it again. Of course, my parents caught on and forbid me to see her. Then the running away started. The harder my parents tried to control me, the more I rebelled. I stole my parents' car and went to Tennessee with my friend and some boys I barely knew when I was 16. We got in a high-speed chase and totaled my mom's new Thunderbird, and I went to juvenile detention. That's where I learned how to play spades. And I began to glamorize the thug life. I actually bragged about juvenile and the high-speed chase to all my friends when I got back. When my parents brought me home, they tried to stop me from destroying myself, but my will was so strong. I was put away in 4 treatment centers before I was even 18. A part of me wanted to finish school and be sober, but I was being pulled in the other direction by my desire to have fun, be independent, and indulge in all the new drugs I was trying. I could not see the consequences, but it wasn't always fun. I dropped out in 12th grade because I was too stoned to be motivated and too embarrassed to go to school with all the rumors that were going around about me and my drunken behavior. The family secret was me. I was the black sheep. I was an embarrassment to my family. My mother was up all night worrying about me. Guys would carry my passed out body to the front door, ring the doorbell, and take off. My mom would carry me to bed. She always told me to come home, and she would never be mad at me. She just wanted me safe. Of course, I moved out so I could do what I wanted to when I was 17. And I got pregnant at 18 and moved right back in. I tried so hard to stay sober when I was pregnant. I would try to be designated driver and take my friends to the bar, and somehow I woke up not remembering driving home a few times. But I thought I was always doing well because I quit drugs when I was pregnant. After I had my daughter, I got right back into cocaine. I was selling it just to be able to have some for free. I got so bad that my parents kept my baby and asked me to leave because they were afraid I would drive her around high or take her to strange people's houses. I tried to move to Colorado to get off the cocaine, but drinking as much as I did required cocaine to not black out. So I made a mess of my life in Colorado like I always did, getting drunk, losing jobs, and blacking out. I got kicked out by my boyfriend for spending all night out with my coworker and wrecking his car. I thought he should understand that I didn't remember doing it. Someone must have been wrong about what happened or making it up. My plan to fix myself by moving did not work out so well, so I came back to Florida and moved back in with my parents. Shortly after coming back, my mother was diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor. I watched as her mind went, and she lost the ability to do anything for herself. I left home as much as I could and went out and got high and drunk. I tried to blot out the pain, only thinking of myself, of course, not about my dad or sister who had taken care of my mom and my child. I prayed to God to please not take her away from me. She died in November of 1996. I progressed into the worst part of my addiction at this point. All the things I said I would never do, living on the streets, smoking crack, using needles, going to jail all the time, I did them all. I did all those things for 4 years, never drawing a sober breath unless I was locked up in jail. I got to the point of being violent, robbing people, and living in crack motels and trap houses. I was all alone. I did not see my family for 4 years. I didn't see my daughter for 4 years. I got pictures of her mailed to me in jail, and I would cry and promise my dad that I would get clean when I got out, but I could never keep those promises. By the end, I just wanted to die. I knew that I would be dead before 30, and I almost welcomed it. When I overdosed in a motel, a guy was with me that gave me CPR. He said that I turned blue and stopped breathing. I could not remember who he was for about 20 minutes because I lost so much oxygen. I remember being disappointed that I was still alive and all I wanted was more crack. And he made me eat something before he gave it to me because I was about 100 pounds and I never ate. I tried a couple more rehabs, but I wanted so badly to be able to drink a couple beers like everyone else. That beer was the strongest deception to me. It always sent me off to the races again, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't face that I was an alcoholic. Plus, I never got a sponsor or went to meetings when I got out. The rehab was supposed to fix me, right? In 2000, I was arrested in Tampa, and I agreed to plea out and get sentenced to a 30-day treatment center. After 3 weeks of being in there, I was going to get my charges reduced to misdemeanors, and I had only 1 week left of rehab. But it was New Year's Eve, and a guy in there said he was getting his girlfriend to sneak in some beer at visitation and some vodka. And we could go in the woods and drink it and go to sleep, and no one would know. So I convinced myself again that I could drink a few beers and go to sleep. I was angry when I saw him telling more people because there wouldn't be enough for me. But I wasn't an alcoholic, right? Normal people don't think that way. I proceeded to chug 5 beers and then drink the vodka like a pig. Of course, I did not go to sleep. It's a roll of the dice when I drink. I never know where I'll end up. So I had convinced myself that I was already caught, and I packed my suitcase and hitchhiked to Tampa and got high. I went on a 5-day bender. I was miserable. I ruined everything again. I was crying on a plate full of crack. I couldn't block out the guilt or shame anymore. It stopped working for me. The party was over. It had been over for a long time, but I was only just then able to see it. My daughter and family hadn't seen my face in 4 years. Every time I went to jail, I called and promised to get sober and come see them when I got out. Why couldn't I quit? My head wouldn't shut up. I ran out of crack, and I went out to rob whoever picked me up, and it turned out to be an undercover cop. Back to jail I went. This last time in jail was different. Instead of being mad that I couldn't get high anymore, I was relieved that it was over for once. I knew I was safe from myself if I was in there. I surrendered in that jail cell, and I said, "Please, God, do something with me." I could not imagine life with drugs and alcohol anymore, but I could also not imagine life without them. It was very scary thinking of being sober and not being able to drink beer for the rest of my life. Usually the only time that I would pray would be before a court date, and I would ask God to let me get out of jail. Or once in a while I would say a foxhole prayer when I thought someone was going to kill me out there in the streets. But God did something with me. I got sentenced to a 6-month treatment center, and while there, I had to get a sponsor and a job. That was part of their rules. I had never been able to keep a job, and I was afraid of working, scared of reality, scared of people. The girl who thought she wasn't afraid of anything. A meeting was brought in one night, and a lady told my story to the T. I cried, but not out of pity. I cried because I never experienced that kind of hope before. If she could do it, I could do it. I held on to the words she said: pray in the morning, call a sponsor, read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, go to a meeting, and thank God at night for that day sober. If I could do those 5 things every day, I was guaranteed to stay sober one day at a time. So I started my journey that night. Like before that night, I was there. I knew I had to quit, but I didn't really want to until I saw her. And it just sparked this hope in me that made me want to. I went to church one day in rehab because I liked the guy who was going. So I didn't really go for the right reasons, but it turned out to be a Pentecostal church. It was very intense. It was powerful, though. I got on my knees and I said, I need you, God, because everybody was on their knees praying, and I was like the only one standing up. So I just got on my knees and I just started repeating, I need you, God, I need you, God. And I felt something so powerful in that church that I really started praying on my knees like my sponsor was telling me to do from that day on. I cannot describe the feeling except that it was a supernatural love, an embrace from God. I did not feel alone anymore. I graduated from that treatment center, and I completed the steps with my sponsor. My first sponsor was very hard on me. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She had me living steps 1 and 2 while in treatment by calling her every day and telling her all of my good ideas. I had to run everything by her so that she could shoot it down, basically. But I needed ego deflation when I was new in order to get out of God's way and allow Him to work. My sponsor loved me enough to tell me the truth and not worry about me getting mad at her. She figured that if I was serious and willing, I would stay anyway. I needed to, above all else, learn to be humble and teachable. I went to meetings like every day for 2 years with that sponsor. She was so strict. I did my 3rd step on my knees in a church garden with my sponsor. It was then that I realized the meaning of the words in the 3rd step. Take away my difficulties, that I may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Then someone from the meetings donated a car to me. This person wanted nothing in return. Many of the women in the meetings donated clothes to me. I didn't understand how people could be so kind and expect nothing in return. Every time I said thank you for a ride, they said, don't thank me, pass it on. My sponsor said that I got the car because God wanted me to give rides to the girls in the treatment center that I just graduated from. So I did. It felt good to help people, and it got me out of my head, which was like a squirrel cage at the time. When I did my 4th step, I really overdid the writing. I suggest looking at the example in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and noting that each resentment under the cause has no more than 19 words and is abbreviated. I wrote a novel, that first one, and overcomplicated it big time. You don't have to make it so long. When I went over it with my sponsor in the 5th step, I felt a freedom that I cannot even explain to you. I had nothing to hide, and I could look the world in the eye, just like the 5th step promises say. This is when I started to feel a closeness to God. If I opened my eyes, I could see Him, hear Him, and feel Him everywhere. Where had this sense of ease and comfort been my whole life when I was seeking it from bottles? The 6th and the 7th step showed me how much I still had to work on. I owed so many court fines, and child support was coming after me to garnish my checks. I just wanted to give up and get high sometimes. It almost seemed easier. Of course, I called my sponsor and told her my thoughts and ran my ideas by her, and she told me to pray, get on my knees and pray, and just open the big book anywhere. And so I did this, kind of rolling my eyes like, okay, God, what are you going to tell me? And I opened the big book, and I opened it right to the page, and I read, most alcoholics owe money. We do not dodge our creditors. I was so astonished that God could speak to me through a book that wasn't the Bible. But it opened my mind, and God became more real to me, more reachable. He would often speak through people at the meetings and through my morning devotionals. I was beginning to get a real God consciousness, a consciousness of the presence of God. He is always with me. It doesn't matter what I do in front of others for show. He sees all. I had to wait a while to make amends to some of my family members because they were not ready to hear more talk. They wanted to see my actions first. The rest of my financial ninth step amends took longer to pay back, but when they were done, what a freedom. I devoted time to the Lord by prayer and meditation as described in the 11th step. I noticed how much better my days go when I do this. It can be something so simple as I have no idea what is bothering me today, and then I remember, I didn't have time to read. I was rushing out the door this morning, My sponsor had me sponsoring women and giving rides to meetings every day. The 12th step saved my life because I was forced to act like an example. And I learned so much more about the steps by taking sponsees through them than when I did the steps myself. I was there in St. Pete for 3 years, and then my dad said that maybe if I moved back to Fort Myers, I could have a chance at getting my daughter back. So I had actually been saving up for like a year, just waiting for that moment, and I had some money saved already, so I moved back here and found a sponsor right away. God has put the right women in my life along my path. I was dating some men and things were not going good, and my new sponsor said, which has been my sponsor for 14 years now, not really a new sponsor, she said, pray for God to pick one for you because your picker's broken. And she said, and go and help someone. So I was going to the treatment center to get some sponsees. I was going to Salvation Army. And an AA group happened to be bringing a meeting there that night. And it was my now husband, Danny's home group. And I remember thinking, like, where's that guy been? I haven't seen him in the meetings before because he was from Cape Coral. And we were friends for a while. And we took it slow and went to church together, both by our sponsors directing us. And I had no idea his sponsor was directing him. And I know my sponsor was telling me, you need to wait to do this, you need to wait to do that. And I was trying to listen to her. And it was like that first date in high school that I never got to have. I never got to go to prom. I started drinking when I was 14. I skipped right over all that stuff. And it was like I got a do-over, I married him in 2005, and he has been a great blessing in my life. I know now he was a gift from God. I was living in Fort Myers for a while with Danny and his boys and a steady job, but I was so scared to ask my dad when I was going to get my daughter back. My husband's sponsor kept talking about this walk to Emmaus thing. He wouldn't let up. He was very persistent. My husband, Danny, went, and all of a sudden, he comes back, and he only wanted to listen to Christian music instead of metal. And he actually cleaned the house for me. And that was weird, and I was very scared. I tried to go with an open mind, because everybody's like, don't anticipate anything, just have an open mind. And so I ended up going, and I felt the love of Jesus like never before. I think that was walk 65, I'm pretty sure. While there in quiet meditation, the one thing on my mind the whole time I was there was just, I'm too scared to ask my dad if I'm going to get her back, and then I don't know what's going to happen. God, I put this in your hands, and he actually spoke to me in an audible voice and said, my child, it is done. You will have your daughter back. And before I could even get home and call my dad, because then I was like, okay, I can call him now because I know this is going to happen. He called me. And he says, you need to get your daughter in a school because it's summertime and school's going to be starting soon. And I was just crying. It was just so amazing to me. And I got her back that summer. We We joined this little church, and there's a whole big story behind that I don't have time to go into. That was pretty crazy. We both got invited by different people to come to this church at our walks, and then they turned out to be husband and wife, but they didn't have it planned. So we joined this church and got involved in the youth group ministry because we had middle schoolers at the time. The boys were starting to go into middle school, and my daughter was going into middle school. I love serving at the church, and I feel useful going into the jails and helping new alcoholics and addicts. That's my favorite place to speak. In the last few years, we bought a home on 5 acres, and I graduated with my bachelor's degree in digital design. So I didn't fry too many brain cells, apparently, or they grew back or something. All my dreams I had as a little girl are coming true, of being an artist, of doing what I love for a living, and it has been a wild ride. We've had so much fun in recovery, all those pictures. We've had jet skis, four-wheelers, we've taken the kids skiing and snowboarding, and all the money you save when you're not wasting it on dope and alcohol. Anything is possible with God if I can get sober, trust me. The benefits I've received from working this program are peace, joy, amazing friends. That picture from my 40th birthday, I had like 50 people at my house. It was friends in recovery, A career, my family's been restored. I have a relationship with my dad and my stepmom now. They trust me. An amazing husband, and above all, I have a purpose. To the newcomer, do what your sponsor says, even if it doesn't make sense or seems like it will work. Pray often. Ask God on your knees to keep you sober in the morning. Call your sponsor, read the big book, go to a meeting, and thank God on your knees at night, and you could stay sober for one day at a time. It adds up fast. I just celebrated 17 years. At first, I came to believe. Now I've come to trust. I've seen Jesus get me through some terrible things and turn them into good. I've used these experiences to help others. I feel so loved and so close to the Lord as long as I'm keeping my eyes on Him and not letting the world come before Him. I know He loves me and He sought me out to save. A lot of people ask me why I share so openly about my past. They say I don't have to go around those people in recovery, or that I'm delivered and I don't need to say that I'm an addict or alcoholic. I feel differently about that. One of my favorite verses is 2 Corinthians 12. But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. I am nothing without God. I have a built-in forgetter in my brain. If I'm not using His gift of grace to help someone else, I'll believe that I can handle a couple beers again, and I'll lose everything. I don't believe He saves us so that we can get great jobs, have families, and forget about the other ones suffering. He saves us so that He can use us to help others like no one else can. No one could have helped me but that lady who told my story and gave me hope to start my journey. No one could have saw through my manipulation and told me the truth out of love like my sponsor did. Helping others is the most important job I have, or I could ever have. In closing, I just want to say that God has a plan for you. He sought you out to bring you here, and He wants to heal you and use you to help others. And that's the most fulfilling purpose one can have. To quote the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, page 29, life will take on new meaning to watch people recover, to watch them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Thank you. That's all I have.